Stop frame 0. It says I'm live.
On YouTube?
Yeah, do I need to start YouTube though?
I don't know. Where's your chat option?
Yeah, right.
You are live.
Hello everybody. I'm experimenting with OBS again. So I can't see the chat yet.
OBS doesn't give you the option to see it, huh?
Yeah, I don't see it yet in OBS. I don't know how to do that. 'Cause I'm doing this differently now.
Rise above an old school day, say hello.
Hello, old school Dave.
I can hear both of us on the thing.
Okay.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah, and I see the chat and change the chat to the live chat. And I see the people there, Rise Above, and Old School Dave is there.
Casey just popped in.
I'm going to pop out the chat.
There's Casey.
Hello, Casey. And then I'm just going to minimize that. I guess this will work. Because I don't really need to see any... I can hear one audio source.
You're fine, he says.
Okay.
Why, thank you, Casey. We think you're fine, too.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, I'm trying to... Kathy's inspired me to be more... to use the pictures and things that we have
right,
of the Hale Bopp
Casey.
Comet.
That's what I said, that he's back to old school Sawyer.
Yeah, I did try to do some of this before. And I guess I want to do more of it. But it was stimulated by Kathy finding some pictures of Pluto and sending them to me. And I looked at them and I knew a number of them. And I've got some pictures here in this little slideshow that I'll go through talking about Hale Bopp and Pluto. Although there's lots more to say on it than I'm going to go through tonight. Because I did learn some things in my reinvestigation of things. Because, see, I made like an assumption to some degree when I was writing my book. That's when I did a lot of research. And I came upon the part in Scripture that I've got posted there. I don't know if you can read it because it's kind of small. But it's, I should make that bigger.
Just read it.
But it's Matthew 24:27. And it says, "For as the lightning cometh out of the east, and shineth even unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be." Okay, so when you actually look at the word lightning, it's actually, there's a number of Greek words that make it up because it's like it's kind of what it's translated to be is shines forth. That's the idea, that it's a shining light, okay? But it's rooted in the word aster in the Greek. And aster in the Greek means star. That's all it means. And there's a lot of words that are talking about the starlight and and you can go back with this exact word, and you can just see like 7 different Greek words that are related to it. This usage, and you come to seeing that what it's also saying is that the starlight like light is strewn across the heavens. And that's, clearly a depiction of what you could consider to be a comet. Because the comet has a long tail that's strewn across the heavens, except for the exception. There's been some exceptions to where, there's one exception that I know about, that a comet, what they thought was a comet, did not have a tail. But maybe it wasn't a comet. Maybe it was a different kind of object that they thought was a comet because it demonstrated other characteristics. But it didn't have a tail. But one thing that was totally unique about the Hale Bopp comet is that it had actually 3 tails. Most comets, they say, have 2 tails because the comets are coming into our view as they're traveling closer and closer to the sun. And they've explained that, according to the science, as it gets as it's headed towards the sun, it puts out what they call an ion tail that is extended in front of it, which is kind of strange, right? Way to think that it's going in the direction towards the sun, and it's got an ion tail in front of it, which I don't understand, how that works exactly scientifically. But I trust that they are describing something that's, well, I shouldn't trust it 100%, but there is a lot of science that is legitimate to the degree that they understand it. And the tails are both visible sometimes, and they're with different forms of light. And in the case of the Hale Bopp comet, the dust tail was visible, but the third tail was not visible to the eye, but through the cameras that they used, they were able to filter out, I think, the yellow light, if I remember correctly, from this article that I was reading. And that enabled them to see that there was a third tail on Comet Hale Bopp. So this picture that I've got displayed here is the bottom left shows the brightest object. That's Hale Bopp. Okay, and you can see that there's 2 distinct tails associated with it, and neither of those is the ion tail. And then to the right, to the immediate right of Hale Bopp comet are 2 dots that are about the same size, and there's another one up in the top left corner that's about the same size as those 2, which are stars. And the reason why they look the way they do is because they're either not as big or not as close, or both, as the Hale Bopp comet. That's why obviously they're smaller, but the Hale Bopp comet was many times bigger than I think any other comets. Another thing that was unique about it. Okay, but then to the right of those two stars that are to the right of Hale Bopp Comet is another object that is quite large, and it's got the same kind of brightness, but there's no tail associated with it. Or, are there? Is there a tail associated with it? That's a question we'll examine uh, in a few minutes. But this picture, I think, was taken by Hawaii Observatory. And they said that the object that's to the right of those two stars, that's to the right of the Hale Bopp Comet, was also a star. But yet, the location of it, well, you can't see it in this picture, but they also called it, when it was first seen by amateur astronomers, I think, what was his name? I forgot the first name of Bopp. But I think he was an amateur astronomer, and so is Hale. And I don't think Bopp had. It's interesting that BOPP is like saying Bo Peep without the two E's in peep. It's a kind of funny little coincidence, perhaps. But and then Hale is the way that Jesus said, and in the book of Revelations it says Hail as he's greeting people. It's a greeting. It's like saying, hello, hello, I'm here, I've arrived. And that's what this verse says, right? The Son of Man's, the coming of the Son of Man. Now, while I'm on that subject, well, let me finish what I was saying about that object that was seen by amateur astronomers, as well as the Hale Bopp comet, because they could see it with binoculars and little amateur telescopes. They could see that there was a object that was showing some characteristics that were unusual. With the Hale Bopp comet or near it, even though we're looking at millions of miles in distance, because in outer space, millions of miles is not much. I mean, maybe it is a lot to the people living on different planets and stuff, of course, but from our point of view, and the next level speeds, those said could exceed the speed of light, so a million miles wouldn't necessarily be that much for the next level either, I would imagine. Anyway, but you can notice that object on the right side there looks like it has like rings. It was called a Saturn-like object by some of the people that first saw it. They also called it the Hail Mary for some reason. Now, I don't know why they came up with that, except for the fact that, well, let's say that was T spacecraft. So they might have thought, okay, let's name it a Hail Mary. I think the reason they were naming it a Hail Mary has something to do with the football. I think there's like a Hail Mary kind of play that they have in football that is like a trick. I don't remember what it was, but you can look it up and maybe you can inform me about what it was, because I don't want to take the time to do that right now. But those are some of the nicknames that this other object received. So I'm going to move to the next
Do you have
picture.
one microphone or just two microphones?
I have two microphones, but
Okay.
no, I don't have them both on.
No, I mean for the event in Augusta.
Oh, for the event in Augusta.
Sorry.
I have as many microphones as we need.
Okay.
Okay, so um, all right. So let me go to the next picture.
Sorry about that. I'm just
Hopefully,
getting
this,
back to this guy.
no, that's fine. That's good. I'm glad you're doing that.
Yeah.
Alt 1. Okay, so this next picture was taken from a Japanese astronomer on Earth. And what's interesting about this is several things. One is that the Hale Bopp comet is in the middle, the brightest object, and it's got like a haze associated with it. And then, uh, and then to the right of it, the next biggest object, that's thought to be that same object we saw in the other one that had the Saturn-like rings. Now, I'm not sure when this was taken, but I think it was about the same time period. And you can see, I don't know if you can see it well on your screens, because I know my resolution isn't that great. My video resolution isn't that great, so, but it's got a blackish looking tail associated with, I'm going to call it the companion object, the alleged companion object. Because it didn't matter to Tiendo whether the companion object existed or not. It was irrelevant, they said on their website. Because they knew that T spacecraft could be wherever T wanted it to be. And if she wanted to show us humans the spacecraft, she would do it. And it appears that she did, but she left it in a format that we could deny it. In other words, we have the choice of whether to recognize it as potentially being a spacecraft or not. Because that object disappeared from view after Hale Bopp went behind the sun. And then when Hale Bopp came out the other side of the sun, orbiting around it, there was no sign of this other object. But then, soon after that, Hale Bopp had an additional tail. And later on, scientists that were studying Hale Bopp for years thereafter were gathering every year for a little symposium. I think it might have been in Texas. I'm not sure exactly where it was that they were gathering, but I remember following what they were saying in them, and they would record some of their findings. And one of the findings was that Hale Bopp had a dual nucleus, and that the nucleus was actually, so it was like two objects, and they were in a dance together. They were orbiting around each other, in other words. And that's the relationship that Pluto has with Charon, Pluto's biggest moon. It's locked in a dual kind of orbit. I'll get more into Pluto a little bit later. But another thing with this picture that was from the Japanese observatory on Earth was that the way that light reacts, the objects that are further away are not only smaller and fainter, but they become more oblong in their appearance. And so I don't know if you can see it well, but all these little dots around Hale Bopp in the middle and the alleged comet companion object to the right. Well, first of all, there's three other objects that are bright, and you can see those three objects among them they're quite oblong. They're not like round. And then all of the less bright objects, which there's degrees of, are also oblong. And pretty much, the same. And even actually the companion object has got a little bit of an oblong look to it. And I don't think Hale Bopp does, though. So that my understanding is that yeah, I don't know about the alleged companion object, whether it does look a little oblong. So I don't know if that means that it's further away from Hale Bopp. I guess Hale Bopp, the center of it, also looks a little bit oblong. So, and and probably in comparison with the companion object, it's approximately the same kind of oblong shape, but Hale Bopp's brighter, and that might be because Hale Bopp is bigger, and it might have a different light composition, because what we see as light doesn't mean that it's all the same. Because light can be generated by a heat source, and it can be generated by a non-thermal heat source. A non-thermal, so not heat source. I know that because of the lights that were seen by the Dawn spacecraft when it went by, got closer and closer to dwarf planet, or not a dwarf planet actually yet officially, but the biggest asteroid in the asteroid belt that's between Mars and Jupiter is called Ceres, and there's a whole lot to say about Ceres as well, but I'm not going to do that right now. Maybe that'll be the next one. Because it's interesting that people do tie them together and talk about them. Even in 1997, they were talking about them. No, not 1997. I think 2006. They were talking about Pluto and Ceres both being classified as planets, because Pluto was declassified as a planet, but it really wasn't. It wasn't the majority of the people voting for that. It was a small amount of people. It was like 200 something people out of the astronomical society that was voting to have Pluto renamed as a planet, and there was like 10,000 members, and 235 voted to do it, and and a lesser number voted not to do it, and so the majority of the voters won. But it's so it's been called that by the media, being called a dwarf planet now. But some people say that it's going to be reclassified a planet for various reasons that I don't really want to go into right now. I don't. One of them is that they go around the sun. But see, the thing with Pluto is we don't have records that show it completely orbiting around the sun, because its orbit is like 248 years. And Pluto was only discovered in 1927, 28, 29, or 30. I've seen different things posted about that. And it's interesting that T tagged her vehicle when it was a baby in 1927. And Doe tagged his vehicle in 1931, I believe it was. they might have tagged them both at the same time, and does would have been then tagged in the womb of, I don't know if they can do that, but I imagine maybe they can, of his vehicle's mother, if the dates are all right. Because T and Doe said that they tagged their vehicles in the 20s one time, and then another time I saw them say 20s and 30s, I guess. So, but that's good enough. A tag meant that they were keeping track of those vehicles so that they wouldn't be harmed. And they talked about them on a recent tape that Kathy and I just listened to, audio tape, that the vehicle had to be prepared quite a bit to receive much of the mind from T and Doe, because too much mind can literally, in different ways, I guess, translate, can actually, actually kill the vehicle. And you can see some evidence of that in the records when Moses asked to be able to see Jehovah, and Jehovah said, "No, you would surely die if you were to look on my face." And so he said, "You can touch me." And he went like behind a rock and turned his back, I guess, and Moses reached around the rock and touched him on the back or the thigh. The translation is not exactly sure, but it seemed like it was the back of Jehovah, and he felt that he was a physical being. But you might have a sense of how somebody could actually die from seeing the face of a member of the next level in their vehicle, from the idea that you saw in like even the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, to where some people had like a bad sunburn from seeing certain spacecraft up close, because perhaps the glow of a spacecraft is because of the mind or the minds that are in it. I don't know that as a fact. I'm just kind of like putting little things together that might help us feel like there's more science, because there is science to it all. It's not like next level has no science, but humans do. That's ridiculous. Anybody who treats the next level and the creation of this planet as an illusion is very much living in an illusion. And I mean, we can see a lot of things that we know we don't understand. Everybody can do that, I think. And whenever we can see that we don't understand, I bet there's like 99% more that we can't see at all. We're not even capable of seeing it with our mind eye or with our vehicle's eye, because there's a difference in that too. That all I talk about the third eye isn't an illusion. The religions, although they're corrupted and distorted and diluted from the original information that stimulated them from the next level, they still have pieces of the truth. What's real, what's true is what's real. Anyway, I'm going to move on. So let's see, I'll go to the next slide. Alt 1 to go forward, Alt 0 to go back. Okay, this is another Hale Bopp picture with the companion object above it. I guess it's a different angle. Maybe this is the Hawaii picture or a different time frame. And it's hard to tell whether there's two tails on it or three, or, and if one is, leading, and I don't know, but I'll just move on to the next one because I don't have much to say about this one. There's again the Hale Bopp comet showing like that it has two tails. That's the same one I did already, I think. I guess I had it in here twice. That's the Hale Bopp comet on the top middle there, and it's showing clearly two tails. And I don't think either one of those is the ion tail. So it's one of, so it's like I said before. If you want to go back and hear it. If you just joined us, that Hale Bopp was determined to have three tails, and I actually have the documentation of that. Maybe I'll show you that in a little bit. But I want to go through the pictures first. This was photographed on March 28th, 1997 at Joshua Tree National Park in Southern California. Clearly shows at least two tails. This one, I'm not sure when this was photographed, so I'm just going to skip through it. This shows one tail that's a blue tail, and that's what they said was the tail that was invisible unless you used a certain kind of light. You filtered out a certain part of the light spectrum, the yellow light, is my understanding. Then this third tail becomes evident. And I guess this picture was taken through that filter. This is showing the picture of the Hale Bopp comet in the middle through a different form of photography, but I don't understand it yet, so I'm going to go past it. I kind of put this together kind of quick the way I do, a lot of times. So that's the Hale Bopp comet's nucleus, and it's different with different light spectrum filters on it to show that it doesn't really have these colors necessarily. It's just that they're showing distinctions of differences in it. So it's got a white center, and you can almost see in that center there's two like white objects in there. So that's what's good about that, because the scientists talk about having a dual nucleus, which I don't know, maybe the companion object joined up with it. Or maybe the Hale Bopp comet, we don't know what it's made out of or what's really in the middle of it. I think that was the Hale Bopp comet taken over, I don't know where exactly. Move on. This shows you the perspective during the daylight. It's very unusual to have a comet visible during daylight. That's another thing that was very different about it. And because of its size, and has a lot to do with it. Because, this is not totally daylight because you can't see other stars. So maybe that's a flash. Maybe that's really not daylight. I don't know. But it was visible during daylight. Another one we just saw already. This, I'm not sure exactly what this is, but it's supposed to be the Hale Bopp comet. And I'll look into it, and I'll probably do a better report, and I'll probably label these slides, because some of them I'll probably use if we get to do some more public meetings, which I think we will. I hope we will, of course.
I'm getting it all ready right now for Augusta, Georgia.
All right, great.
Alexander and I are working on the flyer as we speak.
Oh, great. Nice. And there's another picture of Hale Bopp comet showing the two tails, one being the big dust tail and the other one being that tail is only visible when you get rid of the yellow light. And you don't see the ion tail in these pictures. So it's got three tails, like I've been saying over and over again. And I have documentation for that. There's another one showing the blue tail. Okay, now we're over at Pluto.
I like Pluto.
All right, let me look at your comments because I see some of you all are talking about this. Hello, rise above. All right, you were in here first thing. Okay. Right, old school, right. I used to do more of this kind of thing years ago. Anyway, so Casey says, did you see the new photos they took of Saturn with the new telescope? I might have. I just saw a documentary on Saturn and its rings and how the rings are going to be, and the hexagon shape. I know about that because that's pretty recent from the Cassini actually spacecraft. So there might be some more photos that I haven't seen. I think I have though. So, but if you want to send me a link, I'll look at it. See if there's something I haven't seen because Saturn's another conversation as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Kathy, somehow you're more visible now because the pictures changed.
Oh no! Get me out of there! Oh no!
There you go.
Get me out!
She wants to
Get
be
me out.
hiding.
I'm not hiding.
No, she's not hiding.
I'm not hiding. It's just, you know.
Yep, I know. It's good. It's all good. What am I doing next? Okay, Pluto. Well, I was looking at the chat room because that's what I wanted to do. And
Oh yeah, I was in there for a second, but then I got all crazy.
okay,
Augusta,
so then
Georgia, y'all. It's looking like Augusta, Georgia. Sorry.
okay, great.
In February.
All right. So FDVIV, I see. Greetings to you as well. And Duck Amok says, no record of it going around the sun is irrelevant. Orbital
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
orbital mechanism is precisely understood, and we know it orbits the sun. Yeah, right. That's right. That's not what the part that's irrelevant. What I was saying was irrelevant was what T and Doe, not T, but what Doe and his crew said about the alleged companion object that was traveling at some point with the Hale Bopp comet, which I showed in the beginning of this broadcast some evidence of, from photographic evidence from Hawaii Observatory and from a Japanese observatory. And I don't plan to go back to those right now if you weren't here when I was showing them. But so you go to the beginning of this stream and you'll see those pictures and see what you think about them. And we can talk about it further if you want to. So yeah, that's not.
There's another thing that Duck Amok said that you should address.
All right. Well, I know that that comets go around the sun. That's our understanding humans have about them. Of course, you know, we don't know what's possible and what's not possible. We only know what humans, when I say we, is we only know what's been observed. And even that is very limited, you know, with the kind of instrumentation we have. And we know that as a fact, but can we prove it? Of course, you can prove it by logic, you know, and any scientist that's worth his knowledge of science would say there's a lot we don't know.
You should really get to their other
Okay.
thing
All right. So.
before they leave.
Right. All right. Well. All right.
737 says hello, and then Duckamuck has another comment below that.
737 says, "Hey chat, been a minute. How's y'all even going?" Yeah, we're okay here. The rest of those folks, they can respond to you, I guess. And Keystone Pirate says
no,
the energy.
You're missing Duckamuck.
I don't see it. I don't see it here.
Maybe go to all chat, all messages.
Oh, I didn't change it.
Who knows?
Oh, okay. All right. Let me see if I missed anything then. Okay, so Duckamuck says, it all made sense until T died of cancer. Then suddenly not so much. Why do you believe any of this? Perhaps could be it's all faith. There is no science proving the next level. Well, that's pretty ridiculous to say those statements. And I'll start with the first one. That it all made sense, but then yet you said, then how can you believe any of this? It made sense until T died. So before that, everything they said about UFOs and discarnates and thought forms and being related to the kingdom that created this planet and all the life forms on it, that all made sense. But then it doesn't make sense after T died of cancer. Well, it does make sense. It still makes sense. Everything makes sense. But whether a human has the ability to make sense out of it, that's a question. Because faith isn't about blindness. Faith is about actually having evidence. Evidence of the mind. The mind actually is a form of evidence. It can be a total illusion too. Okay, and for most humans, I don't know if it's most, but for a lot of humans, a lot of reality is they don't believe in. They don't. But it's interesting when you talk to people one-on-one about things that are considered to be supernatural, like ghosts and UFOs and space aliens, and maybe because I know some of what I'm talking about in this regard, that part of my mind influences people to be a little bit more open-minded at times. But what's happened to me when I am talking with somebody one-on-one about things, they end up telling me about things that they've experienced with sightings growing up when they were kids, and spirit things that they experienced, you know, that were considered to be, you know, mysterious, and you know, they didn't know how they happened, and you know, they had all these stories from their families, and you know, and some of them, you know, could be, you know, just made up things, of course. And some of them can be misinterpretation of things, you know, like a knocking sound, you know, that you think is a ghost when it's really just the wind blowing something, you know. But even that, you know, even that can be, you can be very surprised what we can't see. And anybody that's attuned to science and the history of science in the civilization knows for a fact that many years ago there was talk about things that you couldn't see, and then there was talk about things, and yet people were still trying to see what they couldn't see, and they started developing lens to be able to look into the cells, and lens to be able to look out into the universe. And the more they developed their lens capacity and their light capacity, the more they saw. And even to date, there's the recent Webb telescope that just went up there showed many, 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 many galaxies that are, so it's just logic that many people identify with, that there are beings that live on other planets. That's just like common sense to many people. But not too long ago, it wasn't common sense to that many people. But since T&O had been here, since initially the early 1900s, a lot of people were able to actually make sense out of things that others haven't yet arose to that. And it is an awareness kind of condition, and it's not like it's by choice though. I mean, we have to be willing to look at something with an open mind if we're going to be able to see it. Like we can't have a question about something if we don't have some application in the direction of the subject matter that can kind of build a little database for us to then have questions about, that we can actually then get answers to some degree of those questions. And when we get those answers to questions, when we put the work in to trying to understand things, and we get a sense of oh, that makes sense now. That's knowledge. That becomes knowledge. But then, can you prove it to somebody else? Not necessarily. Like, look at the people that think that nobody's gone to the moon, or that these pictures of Saturn and things are an illusion. That was done on some CGI stage. In a computer system somewhere. There are people that actually think that, and they're afraid in a sense. And when you see them talking in the chat room, they're acting like oh, that's just a Hollywood set, and they're talking as if they know as a fact that that's a Hollywood set, and that's ignorance. That's strictly ignorance. When you can actually know when you see something that it's whether it's likely true or not, and not all the time. And
so why does it make sense that T died of cancer?
I don't know. Well, okay. Well, I can address that to some degree, of course, because at first T and Do thought that they'd be leaving together. And they thought they'd be leaving with their crew, but they didn't know exactly whether the crew was going to leave exactly at the same time, because they thought that they would be shot down by the they thought when they first looked at the Book of Revelations, chapter 11, and felt that that was talking about them, there were some parts of it that they wondered about, whether it made any sense. And there were other parts of it that they thought was, I can't really put words in their mouth, so I'm going to say that they believed for the time that their vehicles would be killed. Okay? But then when the press came out and found out that the names of the mysterious two were Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles, and that Marshall Applewhite had been convicted of a felony. Um, uh, then they felt, in other words, the whole world, in a sense, but the United States national press came out in force saying that they were charlatans. They felt very shot down by the press, by the media, and shot down in the street. In other words, the street, if you actually look at the interpretation of those words, the different translation options, it was the two streets. Uh, like, I'm not going to get into that totally, but because I have some videos on this channel that you can look at, Revelation 11, Revelation 12. I don't think they were taken down by YouTube yet. But I probably need to make some new ones that don't challenge any updated community guidelines, like I've had some removed because of.
Yeah.
But so that this information can be available to people if they want to look at it. Of course, I think of those scriptures as the record books. That's how Doe talked about them. He wasn't into the religiosity of any of this. In fact, he was only talking in religious terms because that's how the information came to us, came to the human kingdom, through the Judeo-Christian, Islamic, religious strains of mind, right? And the organizations that grew up from those. And of course, those organizations became totally corrupted to where you can hardly even see the next level's teachings in them anymore. They don't, in theory, they believe in it, a lot of people, but when it comes right down to it, putting those things into motion is too challenging. So they come up with reasons why they don't need to try to put those things into motion, like, killing somebody and what is self-defense really, those kind of things. But anyway, so it was 1978 that I remember, and I verified this with another former member who is still alive in his vehicle named Pip Odie, that it was 1978 when T and Doe sat down with us and said that we might leave before you, and we want to make sure that you're prepared for that if that happens. That was the first concrete sense that we had that they could leave before us. So they didn't say they would. They didn't know because they were not given the entire game plan every step of the way. They just knew the result that they were looking for, and they knew how to go about it step by step and how to pull on the mind from their older member, T's older member, and Doe's older grandfather, I guess, if you want to put it in that terminology, though it has nothing to do with gender. So that's when they said that to us. And they said that if a spacecraft comes, don't just automatically get on any spacecraft that might come after we leave, if we do leave before you. And then I remember somebody asked, well, how are we going to know whether it's you or the space aliens? And they said, you'll know. And I think I understand why it is something that somebody can know. But I think you have to connect with T and Doe's mind in order to be able to make that distinction. Because we can be tricked. Everybody can be tricked. And but there would be a certain sense, like for instance, there would be nothing fearful about it. I think in most all the abduction cases I've heard about and contactee cases I've heard about, uh, there was fear for the person that was being abducted or contacted. And that's because they weren't next level members. And next level members don't even necessarily appear to anybody, especially if they have the potential to grow, because they need to develop the evidence in their mind of the reality of the next level before the next level is going to give them more evidence. And more evidence then becomes more faith. See, the word faith has been distorted by the religions.
What did T say about what she was doing on this planet?
Well, like we heard in the recent tape, 182, was it? That reminded me of what I had heard, and I did remember this part, that she was here to get Doe going, get Doe started, and then she was going back. And Doe couldn't figure out what she was talking about when she would say that, because this was like early in months after they met, that she was saying that.
The first couple months.
Right. And so that
she said that in the first couple months.
yes, I understand. Yep.
So
And
how can you still believe all of it?
why do you believe any of this? Because I've experienced it enough. Okay. And so that was 1973 when T was telling Doe that she was going back after she got him going, got him started. And she wondered why he didn't recognize her. And she recognized him, and she even wondered if there was somebody else she was supposed to find. And Doe felt that about us when when some of the students that gravitated to him didn't seem to recognize him, and he wondered whether there were some other students that he needed to find. And there's a lot to say about all that, but I'm not going to go into that right now. So did I cover that?
I guess so.
The energy from the source reaction to skin. Source reaction to skin. Keystone Pirate. Not sure what that relates to. Beautiful images. Yeah, well, let's go through some more of them, because some of these Pluto images are fantastic. I mean, you can see them on your own. Wikipedia has a lot of images, but some of them that I have, you won't see on. Well, I haven't seen on Wikipedia, but I haven't looked through all of them that they might have there. But I have looked through a bunch of pictures yesterday and the day before that. I don't know when it was exactly, but yesterday I think was part of it. I was going through those, right? Now I don't know. There's no other comments.
Yeah, that's all. That
All
I
right.
see too.
All right, so I'm going to go back to the stream slides. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Oh, I have to go back to the app. Okay. Now, what the heck is that doing that for? Oh, I'm doing the wrong key. There we go. That's a picture of Pluto as the New Horizons spacecraft was going past it. And there's other pictures of that, but those objects that look like a tile, flat tiling, that's a huge spot that they say is made out of nitrogen gas, ice. They're calling it ice, and it's like a mile and a half thick, they say. Now, I don't take that as like as a totally exact science, because how do they know that just the surface of it might be nitrogen based because of the spectrograph images, and that underneath it it's actually made of other elements. But the way they get the height of it is basically, they can see the lips on the objects on those tiles, and knowing how far away they are in relationship, they can then estimate how thick they are and wide as well. So let me go on to the next one. We saw this one already, Pluto, showing the white spot. And Pluto is known to be actually facing us with its pole. Its north pole is actually facing us. So that white spot is on its north pole. I believe that's the case. And if I'm wrong about that, someone learns about it. Otherwise, I want to know about it. But the reason that was important to me was not because of something that I know to be a fact, but it was just curious that Pluto was the planet that Tiendo wrote about in the script, the first script that they wrote, that described Pluto as, well, the whole script of the movie that they wrote was, they called it fiction based on the truth. So they weren't saying that it was all true, but it was based on the truth. Okay, so the idea that the next level has spacecrafts or laboratories that can be as big as a planet, that's the truth part. Now, whether Pluto is one of those laboratories or not is what is potentially fiction. But when I saw this picture in 2015 that New Horizons sent back to the Earth from its pictures when I was going by it, knowing that the pole was the top part of the Pluto, the northernmost part, but Tiendo, when they had Alodi, the resident artist student of the group, one of them, when they had him draw an illustration of Pluto as an Earth lab, drawing the inside of it as having a replica of the Earth that had all kinds of technicians around it and big screens showing the mountains and the weather patterns and all the different things that were happening on Earth geologically. Part of that movie script was all the members flying in on a small spacecraft and entering into Pluto. And Pluto had another object inside of it that was encased inside of it. So it had like a mantle, and within that mantle there was a atmosphere with clouds and things like that, as if it was a duplicate of the Earth. It was like a working model. It's like it appeared. And it showed the Earth, and it showed 4 spacecrafts like on the 4 winds in the upper atmosphere of the planet. And it showed, like I said, some atmosphere, and it showed then the top of it from before they knew about this. Well, I don't know if they knew about Pluto's being tilted 180 degrees, is it? No, 90 degrees. on its orbit, on its axis at that time in 1982 when they started writing this movie script. But they depicted that there was like a big louvered door. And I describe it as louvered because it looks like, I don't know if you've ever seen those cages, vegetable strainers, for steaming vegetables, the metal things, and they kind of like they open up wide and then they close up into a circular ball, and the panels kind of mesh together. Okay, so they drew it a little differently than that, and I could show you that, but
No.
I'm not supposed to show you that picture, sad as I can say, because of this stupid lawsuit. But actually, somebody can find it because it was put in the New York Post, I believe, and so they could publish it. You could say they're using that picture to show it. Anyway, that's another whole story.
Well, I doubt Mark and Sarah would sue the New York Post. They'd get their asses handed to them.
Right. So you could show it, the picture from the New York Post. And so this door was huge, so that a really big spacecraft could go through it, but it only opened up to the size that it needed to open up to let the size spacecraft go through it that needs to leave or come. And so there's other pictures that show the spacecraft approaching Pluto and then showing Pluto from the inside as if the light's coming through from the sun from the spacecraft that's coming is coming through. So you see light coming through into the inside, and then you see the older members landing, and so you see the whole progression, because the movie script was all about the next level's perspective of working with their experiment for growing souls and all the biological life forms that were on Earth that they developed, so that souls could become members of the next level with physical bodies and physical spacecrafts. But physicality beyond our grasp of what is physical.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll go to the next one. So it was interesting then. So I started to think about this white spot as, I wonder if it's like something that a spacecraft could go right through it. Because if it's made out of ice, then what if a spacecraft was really hot and wanted to make an opening in it and just go right through it? But, I mean, that may be silly. But at the same time, how do we know what's silly and what's not? But, so I started to think of this white spot as that louvered door. Okay, we'll go to the next one.
That's interesting.
Here's another picture where with the colors used. I think these colors are being used because of the spectrograph. The view of those instrumentation on the New Horizons spacecraft. So they might be real because Pluto actually has an atmosphere. I don't know if I have a picture of the atmosphere. I should add to it so I can do this again and maybe even show those new pictures as I accumulate them. Now this is a picture showing Pluto with, I didn't know, that wasn't the white spot where that snail was. I'm calling it a snail. It's a funny idea, but I'm not going to go through that right now until I get to the other picture. Now this is Pluto, one of the first pictures I saw of Pluto, taken from the New Horizons spacecraft, it wasn't at its closest point yet, I don't think. And those 4 spots on the bottom were really unusual looking to me. And I thought, what the heck is that? Because they looked like they were about the same, in their positioning. And I thought, were those vents of some sort, or was that like the engine capacity of it? Were those entry points, or what were those things? Is that just some kind of something that people would say is just a natural occurrence? Well, a natural occurrence doesn't mean that it's not scientifically developed to be that way. I mean, humans can even design things using natural occurrences. They do that all the time with biology and particles and genetics and things. They're using living structures and they've learned how to manipulate them. And if humans can do it, the next level can do 1,000 times what humans do. I don't know what the number would be, how many times they can do, but humans are limited on purpose by the next level because they would abuse things. What happened?
You're hitting the wrong button again, maybe?
Oh. It's just not catching up with me. I'm just going too fast. Is that what it is? Oh, okay. I guess I was going too fast. I don't know why it's showing me the screen of my text. Alright, I'm past it anyway. So this is that spot that was being highlighted in the previous picture. Or part of it, anyway. And it just shows... it's not the best picture that we have of this. Let me move on and see if there's any better ones. Yeah, this is the one I wanted to show, one of them. But, so this is showing one part of Pluto that I think they're saying is nitrogen ice based. And it shows like a couple objects on it. And there's other pictures like this that show that picture that I was calling a snail. It's hard to see, but my first impression when I saw this was these look like roads to me. But that's not what the scientists are saying. They're saying that they're like blocks of nitrogen ice that were compressed by the mountains. So I guess like a glacier of some sort. Maybe they are. But it was interesting that these objects that some people called stones that made their own pathway, because that's something that we know happens, where a stone can leave a trail because of the gravity and things like that. I'm not sure what the mechanics are of it. But the fact that you've got pathways in multiple directions makes it hard to think in terms of, but of course those could be low points, right? So that water could rush there if there was water on it, because they did find geysers on Pluto as well as caverns, and it has an atmosphere that looks a little blue, so it's, I think, generated from methane gas. I might be wrong about that a little bit, So this isn't like a science show, but it's showing little hints, and you can go research it and, add to what I'm saying and tell me about what you find and point me to the articles, because I'd like to learn more about it. But I thought maybe those objects were maybe like a mining operation for the next level, because they do that kind of thing. I know that from Tiendo. See, I don't know that from experience, but I do trust that Tiendo know things that I don't know. And maybe I do have, my soul might have some experience with that fact that the next level does mining operations. I don't know. It's hard to say, because souls aren't all of the same experience. doesn't really matter. There's that other picture of that. There's one of the current pictures that I found of those four dots on the bottom, but you can barely see that there's four of them there. And this is the picture that um, I kind of wanted to show. That was the snail picture. It looked like it was traveling, and I wasn't. I brought that up on my own. I didn't hear that from anybody else. And then Kathy sent me this picture among a few others, and there was a comment on one of them from somebody else, and he said it looked like a snail to him. So that was really fun to hear, to see that.
And what was the debate that you and I had about it?
You thought it was a rock, right? And and that, so I sent Kathy somebody else that thought it was a rock, and he showed a picture of no, an article of some sort that showed that rocks can make their own path, which I mentioned before, and so I guess it could be a rock that's making its own path. Okay.
Well, and then do you have the picture that shows where that object may be coming from? Remember that one?
There was another one.
Remember it was like a field of rocks and that sun
Oh,
was in front of
oh
it?
yeah, I heard that in the very beginning. Yeah, there's like a mountain. This
Mm-hmm.
like flat area juts up against a mountainous region. So maybe the rocks did roll down from there, right? And they could have rolled over here, and maybe there's been a lot of them, and they've made these pathways in different places, and um, following the gravity or at least resistance areas. But so yeah, that's all possible. And there's another picture that I didn't include. That's really good. That's the scarab picture. I don't know if I can stick it in there now, if I could find it. I think you can just insert these, and they'll make their self. They'll become part of the. There's that one, that one, that one, that one with the rocks. No, I didn't put that one in here yet. Let's see. Let's just put it in this picture folder. I don't think I'm going to find it quickly enough. Um,
Maybe don't worry about it, babe.
I already got it.
Okay. Hey, you just went quiet for a while.
Yeah, I know. I'm still here, folks. All right, that's good enough. Let's see if it shows up here. Oh, I guess I was at the end. Okay. Going through Pluto. Let's see if it shows up. And if it doesn't, then I'll just have to give up on it.
Oh, Chloe must be here. I'm leaving.
I guess it's not showing up. I guess I have to restart it somehow. All right, well, so much for that. Let me go back to the chat room. But I know I'm a crazy thinker, but I'm not saying it's accurate. But when I saw that snail picture, I'm calling a snail, I thought, well, why not? You know, why couldn't it be some kind of that? For all we know, I think it's possible that Tiendo and crew knew that the United States was sending a spacecraft called New Horizons out to, because they're aware of what's going on the planet. Whatever they want to be aware of, they can look into. I know that. And so it's possible that they even staged some things for that New Horizons spacecraft to see. So that, well, because another thing that I understand, well, never mind. I'm not going to go through that any further because I don't have those other pictures loaded, and I don't know enough about this software to load them up quickly. Although maybe I do. If I turn it off, turn it back on again. All right. Well, I made a stab at um, doing this, so I'll go back to the chat room. Casey says, these are crazy photos of Pluto. Is it true that it's part of the Kepler belt now? Um, I just lost the Kuiper belt, right?
Kepler.
I think Pluto is supposed to be part of the Kuiper belt.
Oh.
And the other belt that Ceres is a part of is a different asteroid belt. Or, yeah, you'll have to look it up because maybe I'm getting mixed up about it. Uh, Casey says, although these paintings should be exhibited somewhere, I hope their owners consider that sometime. Yeah. Um, well, if we win this lawsuit, then that's going to be part of what we win, I hope. That they can be exhibited somewhere. Casey says, a very cold atmosphere. Yes, very cold atmosphere. But remember how in the beginning they thought Pluto was, going to be just nothing on it. Just going to be like a cold rock, barren of life. And yet it's got all these different forms of atmosphere and water. And, they used to say that, there's no water out there in space. And then there was the rumor that there was water found on Mars. And then they said, they sent the rover up and stuff, and they verified that it was underground, and because the evidence of the water was, the erosion had taken place in the past, and so humans are gradually learning more and more about what they didn't know, and that's the way it's going to always be for humans. There's always going to be a lot more to know. So anybody that tells you what's not possible, they're ignorant. They're ignoring having an open mind. Not that they're ignorant, like they're a fool or something. But when they start telling other people what they think is the truth, and they put them down, that's it's a very poor characteristic. It's a primitive characteristic to put other people down for what they don't understand, even if they are. We all have ignorance, whether we admit it or not. In other words, we all kind of, I think, choose sometimes to close our minds to certain things. I don't know, maybe not. I shouldn't say all, because that would be like an absolute that I don't know about. But we've been looking at this story about the reports that said that there were these two, what are they, 7 foot, 8 foot, 9 foot
I think
creatures,
8 to 10 foot.
8 to 10 foot black shadow people or whatever they were, and that they were supposedly shooting somebody, these shadow people, and in a mall in Florida, where there was an event
They
that
were
took
not
place.
shooting people. People were shooting at them.
Oh, okay.
They were not shooting at people.
Oh, they said people were shooting at them, and there was like a whole bunch of police cars photographed from a helicopter, and
Well, and people on the ground saw over 100 police
yeah,
respond.
right. And the story that people are getting doesn't seem to add up,
They
because
said that it was teenagers with sticks fighting. and over 100 cops showed up. They put out 30. They turned off 30% of the power. They cut 30% of the power. They cut all of the power to the mall and 30% around the mall. They turned the police scanner off, and they shut the airport down.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
Right. That's what the reports we've gotten so far about it. And I haven't done any searches, but this one person said that they searched for mall something,
Shooting.
mall shooting, and nothing comes up.
Miami mall shooting.
'Cause I remember hearing about this when it happened, right?
It was on New Year's Eve.
Yeah, New Year's Eve. We heard a report about a shooting at the mall in Florida. I remember hearing that.
Yeah, I do too.
And I don't know if you can find anything on it now.
You
Maybe.
probably can. Now
You
there's
probably
a bunch
can.
of reports out about, the giants at the mall.
Yeah, now one person is saying that it could be the Nephilim. The giants at the mall. Because that term Nephilim is actually the Hebrew word that's translated in Genesis chapter 6, verse 1. Well, it's a number of verses, but chapter 6 is a story about what are the fallen angels. Individuals that were once sons of God, which means a student to some degree, or even a member of the next level, which Doe talked about as being some that were given elementary service and were given some tasks to do, and that they fell away from looking to their older member for guidance on doing those tasks, and started doing their own tasks on Earth, and the next level then cut them off because they cut themselves off, and so then they were given opportunities to return, and so anyway they're described as having had relations with the daughters of men, the daughters of humans, because the word is related to Homo sapiens, and they produced offspring that were called Nephilim. And that word actually can mean giants. It can also mean mighty ones. Because if you look at the book of Enoch, it talks about the fallen angels and that they were called watchers, which seems to me to be like what the elementary task was, to observe certain things at the next level wanted them to learn from doing, and in order to develop so that the next level could see that if they were trustworthy or not. And they ended up not being trustworthy because they started, according to Enoch, which T said was an incarnation that Doe performed, the soul Doe. According to that record, which may not be 100% accurate, they were teaching humans how to use herbs for healing and things that you might think, well, isn't that a good thing, right? But not if the next level is not ready for that, to teach the humans that, because the next level knows what they're doing when they grow the garden. And anyway, those individuals began, the way the story's told, began consuming. That's where that "they're going to eat us" comes from, I think, because they were consuming humans, and it got to the point to where the next level decided to wipe them out because they had become so corrupted, and so that became what we know of as the flood, the Noah flood. And then after that, the next level adjusted their strategy in some ways and changed the lifespan because people could live a lot longer in those days. So then they restricted the lifespan of humans to about 120 years. Of course, the biology has gone downhill, and then maybe it went uphill again, because I mean it was a lot less than in previous years, according to our records, than now. But I guess maybe it goes back and forth. I don't know exactly how that works, but anyway, so Nephilim now. Some people are saying that the Nephilim are the creators of humans and are equivalent with the Elohim in Genesis. So, which I saw Rael talking about in his book. He was the first one that I saw really talking about that. That was probably about 15 years ago. Maybe not that long. When I was writing my book and I was examining anybody I could find that was putting out some kind of prophecies. My original book was going to kind of rate the prophecies from different people, to what, in my opinion, was more true and less true, or what's come true and what hasn't come true. And but the book was going to be so big, and it kept on growing and growing and growing, to where I couldn't find anybody that was going to publish it, and I couldn't afford to publish it myself until somebody donated some money to me to do so, which I'm very thankful for.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, let's see. Oh, there's a few more things here. Watchers, right, Keystone Pirate. And Paladin says, have the spirits of T or Doe or any of the graduating class visited Earth? I would say no in the context of spirits. Because they're not the same as spirits. When they graduated, well, first of all, the next level, a spirit is, in T and Do's terminology, equivalent with the word mind. So they taught that every human vehicle has a mind of its own that's growing in the vehicle and around the vehicle. It's throughout the entire vehicle. I'm not sure if there's one place where it resides more than other places, but I can't get to that technical degree. I don't have that understanding, but that when the vehicle dies, that spirit continues to exist. It's not really life, because the only place there's really life, in the sense of eternal life, the way that Jesus taught and others taught, was becoming a member of the next level, because then there's no death. But the human condition is a dead condition, because the vehicles and the spirits even die. I mean, the spirits don't die until the next level decides to wipe them out. And souls now is another category of a seed-like object that's like a plasma base, that is like a chip, like a computer chip, that is given to certain human vehicles, and that can be filled with next level spirit or next level mind, what was talked about in the record books as the Holy Spirit or the Holy Mind. And it's holy because it's whole, it's real, it's from the next level, it's above human, it's no longer mammalian based, and it's not comprised of a combination of misinformation and true information. It's totally true information. It's totally real information. Where in the human kingdom, there's all kinds of illusions that people, have heard through the mythologies and over and over again been taught certain things that are not necessarily true. And so that's what's called misinformation mind. So when the group members left, they took their souls left those bodies. Okay, now what happened to the human mind? I think it was just recycled. Or I don't know what happened to it exactly, but it stepped aside is one of the ways Tiendo talked about it, in order to allow the growth of that soul to exist. Because part of the classroom in the beginning was to get rid of our human mind. And that meant literally like blocking out the past so that we weren't thinking about it. We weren't reminiscing. We weren't talking about it. We weren't, if we wanted to do that, then we would leave the group. And of course, people did it, talked about the past sometimes or in their own minds thought about it at times, but that was considered to be not doing your homework if you let that continue, because there's a reality to building your mind fresh, being born again in the real, born of spirit. Let me put it that way, the way Jesus put it, that you needed to be born again by flesh to be born of spirit, born of mind, born of next level mind from your older members that give it to us. And then we have to take it into our consciousness and then apply the lessons that they give us and the techniques that they give us to block out the human mind. So they didn't bring any human mind with them when they left, as far as I'm aware. And they went on board a spacecraft, however they did that, walking up a ramp or whatever, because the soul actually grows to have substance and more power the more it grows. And so it went on the spacecraft. And then for some of them, or maybe all of them, they would have been given a next level grown dense physical vehicle to occupy, to take over, to be the pilot of, for their future tasks and lessons. So they haven't returned that I know about. They could have, they could have gone on a spacecraft and come down to the Earth and walked around and did things on the Earth, and they could have made it so that nobody could see them, because they can control the vibrations of those vehicles so that humans don't have the perception with our eyes to identify them. So that's, what I believe happened. I'm not aware that they had any reason to come back to the Earth to do any tasks, but they could have. It's just not for us to know, and we don't need to know, and they don't need to come back because they can communicate with us from their spacecrafts very well. They can even appear to us. They don't do it like they don't appear to us like a spirit or like a light in the sky, or something, because they don't want to trick us into believing in them. They don't, because the lower forces do that kind of thing, and the space aliens do those kind of things, try to trick people. And maybe that's what those two creatures were doing, if there was such a thing happening. I tend to think more like that it was a psyop of some sort. Or it was, a distorted story to cover up something else that happened.
What about my theory?
What was your theory again, Kathy? Say it. Go ahead, say it. You thought it was, she said that maybe it was one group of space aliens, or some of the space aliens, and not that many of them.
You don't know that.
Well,
Tiendo never said that there weren't many
Have you listened to all the tapes?
I've listened to about 300 of them.
And how many tapes are there?
There's 900 and something, but they talk about that there's several different strata,
Yes.
and that some are working for the next level without even realizing it.
Right, without even realizing it. Right.
Some are working against.
That's right.
It's a mini
I
member.
agree with that. I remember that as well. So we don't know how many space aliens there are. Doe did say that there could be thousands of spacecrafts coming in shifts. Next level spacecrafts and space alien spacecrafts in order to harvest human souls. And that would be like, so the space aliens are also on a harvest mission. That's another thing that they said that they were doing, right? They were here to harvest, they were going to harvest their own souls. You can read that in USA Today.
Yeah, and that they wanted to bring as many people over to their side and to keep people out of the next level.
Right.
Because they can't get back to the next level. So my theory was that T and Doe had talked about, or maybe it was, T and Doe had talked about, I think T talked about how there were, that all the lower forces aren't necessarily working together. That there are some of them that were pretty mad at Lucifer, and they had been tricked. They'd been duped. And they didn't realize that the actions that they were taking was going to get them kicked out of their home, the next level. And so when that happened, they turned against Lucifer and went off and did their own thing. Now, many thousands, however many thousands of years ago, that potentially, this is my theory, that potentially those space aliens, those lower forces, would want to appear to people and show themselves to people so people would be scared of aliens, and then therefore they wouldn't work with aliens in the future. They would not work with aliens to help them get off this planet. And they would think by doing so that maybe they could get back into the next level.
Yeah, I know. I know what you're saying. I see what you're saying. I'm opening my mind to that more because of the other things that they said. Remember that they, I think Doe said about the Ross Perot event that there was an alien group associated with him that thought that if they could show the next level that they were working for good, that the next level would reinstate them to some...
Allow them to come back.
Yeah, allow them to come back into a next level program to overcome their humanness. They would still have to go through the garden.
But they're past that point because they've already done that, right?
But they didn't do it enough because they didn't learn enough to take the opportunities that they were given, like they talked about in the Black Hawk tapes. That Lucifer and his associates
they were given
had many opportunities. Yeah. And so if they didn't take them then, but that doesn't mean that they never would take them again. Because the next level, like even with the dropouts from the group, like my fellow classmates that left and myself as well. When you dropped out, if you wanted to still stay connected, then those stayed in touch, unless for some reason the next level blocked T and Doe from staying in touch, which did happen with the 19 that were separated from the group in 1976 by T and Doe because they weren't learning their lessons. They weren't wanting to put their all into it. They weren't showing evidence that they could make the grade and make the final cut for graduation. And some of those ended up finding their way back into the group through unusual circumstances. and left with them were among the 38, like Durodi, Steelodi, Stamodi, I think, are three examples of those. And also Ascodi, and I think another member who was an early member, I forgot his name now, though, Todd Odie. Was it Todd Odie or
I don't
one
know.
of the ones that entered the group in 1994, the second time that there were public meetings. So we don't know. For all we know, some of them were sent. The souls of them were sent to relate with human vehicles now, to have another chance to recognize their older member through Tiendo's teachings, and do the best they could to conquer their humanness and be of service to the next level, which is actually the most important part. Well, it's not the most important part necessarily, but it goes hand in hand with conquering humanness to be of service, of sharing Tiendo's information with other people. Yes, Paladin says aliens have been showing up on Earth for thousands of years. Yes, completely agreed. And even before that, we don't know how many civilizations there have been. Doe didn't know if they had enough technological development in past civilizations to go to Mars. And he wondered if they did go to Mars, what did they do with all the space junk that was created by all their attempts to go to Mars or wherever they went. But he knew that the next level could clean that all up very quickly. And they can make it so that there's very little evidence of previous civilizations. So Paladin's been saying a lot of things. Let me see if I can go to the beginning of it. What relevance do wormholes have with regards to above-human space-time travel? Well, I think they could have a lot of relevance. I don't know for sure. I know that we saw the movie Contact when it came out, while I was in the classroom, I believe. And Tiendo talked about Bob Lazar's understanding of bending time and space. And so that could be seen as a type of wormhole technology. Tiendo did say that there were freeways or highways, this is what they used, highways in the heavens. So in other words, that's another little indication that there's ways of traveling through time and space in a very quick way, a quicker way than you would think was possible. And also that the speed of light, the next level could travel faster than the speed of light, which might be through a wormhole. Then Paladin says, thanks. The reason I asked if there is any possibility they could communicate with you. Yes, they can communicate with you if they want to. But they're not going to necessarily do it in a way that's obvious to your vehicle. Because the space aliens can do things like that. And they can trick you into thinking that they're the ones that are the next level. So the next level does it in very subtle ways, and that you don't really know for sure and is happening. But it wouldn't be like, seeing a ghost or a spirit form or a spacecraft that, where people walked out of the spacecraft and appeared to you, and it wouldn't be like that. Because they need people to, if anybody had that experience of being abducted by, that's, I remember Tiendo saying early on that anybody that had a vehicle, a human body that had the potential to take their next best step towards growth, towards members of the next level, wasn't going to be allowed to be abducted by the space aliens or even to become a contactee. So they picked the vehicles specifically, and they give the soul that's returned to take over the vehicle choices on what vehicle to take. We just heard that in tape 182, talking all about that. And we still need to do a live stream about that whole tape. Then Paladin says, we don't yet understand space-time and other dimensions, can see that it would be difficult to explain. Yes, it is difficult to explain, but Doe did say that the next level was like a different dimension. But they're still very physical, but they can operate in ways that to us is a different dimension because we can't see them, we can't detect them, with our instrumentation. Like they can communicate with us through radio waves, but humans haven't been taught how to decipher the radio band of frequencies that the next level communicates on. And when they communicate, they don't take over us like a channeler, so that we have this new voice coming out of us, or that we're able to just go into mesmerized state like a medium. They don't do it that way. Those are spirits. Those are tricks brought by the space aliens and the discarnate world, and the humans that are becoming the vehicles for those tricks. Once somebody gets into those kind of realms, I think it can be very hard to actually let go of that because it's so enticing. And I believe we recently heard a tape where they talked a little bit about that. Paladin says, thanks, that's a good way to describe it. It's like rebooting. Well, yeah, I think, for them to, they're not actually, well, I don't know if rebooting would be the way that would be described when they left their vehicles and they went into a next level vehicle. Maybe, I just haven't heard Tiendo use that way of thinking, but it doesn't sound far-fetched. Because they're going to retain their, they don't necessarily, like the soul doesn't necessarily retain all the experiences that it had to build itself, to build into the soul body. It has the strength of will, and it has the information that was true, that was given by the next level of the members. It has the experience. It knows a lot of things, okay? But it doesn't necessarily remember those things unless it's stimulated to remember those things. So there is a type of, for those souls to be put into a new vehicle, they're not probably going to remember, they might not remember what they did with Uncle Joe and Aunt Susie, when they were on Earth in a vehicle, that soul taking over a vehicle from whatever age it started to have that interface. And T said that you would outgrow wanting to have that consciousness, still have that consciousness when you got into the next level. Maybe the ship had the new containers on board for their souls. Well, I believe so. That's what T and Do were saying, that they were growing those new containers, new vehicles, new more dense physical bodies than the soul body was. on board the spacecrafts in laboratories. And it could have been put on one table was a next level grown vehicle that was grown specifically for that soul. It's got specific characteristics that that soul can learn to use as it grows, but it's got some characteristics that can automatically, I think, be put into effect. But it's a growing experience. They're like babies in a sense, and then they become like toddlers when they get into the next level, and or young adults. You know, they're not little. They don't have vehicles that grow in stages. The vehicles are adult vehicles when they're put into them by the next level. Paladin says, reminds me of the term angels unawares, visiting without our knowing. Well, yes, Tiendo said that when the members of the next level worked closely with hospitals, not the hospital, the administration necessarily, but they were present when people were leaving their vehicles to help them make the transition to whatever their next step was. So there's a lot of hands-on work done by the next level. It's not like everything's not automatic. There are automatic things that happen, but there's a lot of hands-on things that are happening. Different crews are assigned to these different tasks. Now, I'm not saying that means that those individuals are actually physically in that hospital. They could be operating on computer systems on a spacecraft. But part of that first movie script was showing how they would work with humans through their problems when those humans were asking for that help, asking in their own way. It didn't have to have a certain definition of asking, even though Jesus did indicate that the way to communicate with your Heavenly Father was to project your asking to your Father in the heavens, in outer space, the highest source we can imagine, as far out into space as we can imagine, because that kind of communication actually bypasses, actually goes to where the space aliens can't interfere with it, that communication, because they can interfere with communications of humans. Sometimes it can be dreams that the next level can use for humans, but also dreams can be the lower forces as well. And it can also be like a type of garbage collection or whatever, I don't know, things that are just like the fumes of the vehicle. Paladin says, I can see that if they kept their hearts and minds open and continued to learn, they would still have a chance to attain the next level. Right, speaking of the space aliens that dropped out. So are you and a few students still enlightened or a treasure? Well, to some degree, it's a blessing to still have enough of Tiendo's mind to where we can help, be of assistance. It is a treasure, because everything from Tiendo is a treasure. No question about it. And that's why, it's really encouraged to study all the material that you can get. Listen to the audio tapes. Watch the Beyond Human series, read the Beyond Human series transcripts in the Heaven's Gate book on the website, heavensgate.com or heavensgatealso.com. And, project your asking to T and Do directly. Ask them for service if you want to. It's always a free will, and it's a daily kind of thing. I mean, it's not necessarily, once in a blue moon, but you do it when you feel to do it. It shouldn't become something that's like the way that the religions made the Our Father into a rudimentary, prayer. They called it a prayer, but it loses its meaning. It loses its potency if we make it into something that we just repeatedly say over and over again. And Tiendo's wisdom will outlive us all. Oh yeah, no question about that. They're going to exist way beyond this planet existing. They exist as long as they want to, but it's also a choice. It's always a choice to be in the next level. Well, that's about the end, and I think we've covered enough material here. Anything else? So, with that said, I'm going to say good night. Good night, folks. Got to figure out how to turn this off. Oh, stop streaming.